Hi, Jen. It's such a pleasure to have you as my podcast guest today.
Hi, Lisa. It's great to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Absolutely. I'm really, really excited. And before we dive in, as usual on this podcast, I have some warm up questions for us to start the conversation. So, if you can own any piece of art and price is not an issue, what piece would that be and why?
Mm. It might be a piece from the artist Ribot. And Ribot is, I believe, Spanish artist and a performance artist who people have probably done it before her, but actually started to sell live work in a way, like, and really challenge the idea of what is commodity, like what we buy and what we sell and what has value. And La Ribot is the name of the artist, and started to say you can buy the beginning of this piece, you can buy the middle of this piece. And so even though I wouldn't be able to display it, I think it would be meaningful, really meaningful to me, because I also work in live arts and really try to talk about the value of liveness and ephemerality.
Oh, wow. I've never heard about the artist, so I'm definitely going to Google.
Yeah, that's a different kind of value and ownership, I guess.
Absolutely. And then I think a very relevant question to your field and what you do. What are some unexpected places where you found and encountered great art at beyond just galleries and museums?
Um, well, I work very much in the public realm, like, and work with particularly with temporary art in public spaces. So certainly, site specificity, I absolutely love. And I would say one time for a while I was living in Amsterdam, and there was a squat that a bunch of artists took over and turned it into, a vegan kitchen and an art gallery. And I think that was the first time for me as a younger person. I think I was like 26 or 27, that I saw artworks like take over a building, like, and not just the artworks themselves, but sort of the ethos of the art. And it was like in the staircases, projected on the building. It was in the food. It was in the way they were living. So that one is really memorable, and it had kind of like a punk rock heart and soul to it.
It's like takes all your senses in.
Yes, absolutely. And it was graffiti, it was music, it was also, it really made me realize everything is material for art. It doesn't have to just be um painting and drawing and sculpture and these kind of different kind of, it is anything can be that material to, sculpt, so to speak.
Absolutely. And talking about timeless or iconic art, what do you think are the qualities that they should have to become such?
Timeless or iconic art. Well, I don't know. It's an interesting time to think about that too, because also there's a lot of talk right now too, also about a lot of discussion around, do we separate the artist and the art? If like we're, many artists that we're discovering like recently or centuries and many long time ago that, are not good people. And so can we still love their art if we separate? Can we still appreciate their art? And I don't think there's one opinion to that. It's a really valid conversation to be had. But I would say, I don't think anything necessarily is timeless per se. I think we are um can consider what we value and what is important and what has contributed actually to art history as well. But I would say, because you can't just say something like beauty, like is beauty enough, like, and I would say no, because some beauty was also harmful in some ways, but and because it was who it was done by and whatnot. But I would say I would question, I guess, what is timeless and what is
Absolutely. That's a
iconic,
relevant
iconic
question for
itself. So
sure. Definitely. I think based on like who's answering or even like which time we're looking at, the answer
right.
will change even 5 years from now with the
Yeah,
technology and everything that is involved these days in
also true.
particular.
And I guess it's also subjective, right? Like anywhere we are is also like what one person says is timeless and iconic is really is not going to be of interest or value to someone else. So I guess it depends. Are we talking about the market? Are we talking about yeah, history? You know, are we talking about what is offering us something in the present?
Talking a little bit about you and your childhood, were you a creative child and what sparked curiosity in art for you?
I took dance at a very young age, and that was really my gateway into art in general. So I got put into dance at a young age, and then I got put into ballet, I think at 6 years old, and I hated it. And then I went back to ballet later, and I love it. You know, just like I think I actually love all forms of dance, but dance was kind of my initial spark, and I was grateful that my parents put me into that. And it was also my family was very athletic. So I was also doing like gymnastics and baseball, and I have two older brothers that I was constantly doing movement with. And so I had this one side of my family that was quite athletic, and then my mom would take me to galleries and introduce me to poetry, and also I always loved music, and so it kind of, I think the marriage of the two in a way when you is like athleticism and art is really becomes dance. And for me, then that also found my way. I went to university for contemporary dance in Concordia, and I also always loved writing, and I used text a lot in my work. And that kind of led me to, I also took in a lot of visual arts as inspiration to create dance works. And then I ended up working closer in visual arts. But I always sort of came at it through like an embodied lens because of that dance background.
Yes. And you also studied visual studies, right? Curatorial.
Yes, I did. Yeah. So I went back to school after I had been in the professional field for quite a while. And I went and I got my master's in curation and visual studies program at the University of Toronto. Um, and I focused on the body in gallery and visual art spaces and looking at ideas of the choreographic in visual art spaces and how performance leaves traces in a space after it's gone, and how liveness and performance can be exhibition themselves and not just be an activation to or a performance to activate a visual art work.
Are there any exhibitions that left a very lasting impression on you that you really liked?
So many. Yeah. I would say one of them that I met our curator Camilla Singh years ago before we became friends and later collaborators. And I really liked how Camilla, for one, put herself in the work as a curator and artist. It's a fine balance to be able to do that. But I walked in a gallery once, and there she was in kind of this human birdcage. And like beautiful, but also really speaking about the idea of also labor and kind of labor on display. And then also Camilla worked a lot with music and rock and roll, which is also, we both have a lot of that interest, and seeing how that was incorporated. And she did an exhibition about drumming and drum kits, from actual drum kits to someone else was drumming these huge cheeses. And so that was great. And so I just like Camilla's aesthetics and politics, and then I also I like, there was a work by Jeremy Deller that was I saw in Munster, and it worked with gardeners over 10 years. And I thought that was really interesting, just like off the top of my head, thinking, in a different kind of way of working with the material of time, and also plants, and also community. And so with both of those, with those kind of elements, I really appreciated how he allowed an artwork to literally grow and to care for a work, but to have other people be custodians of that work as well over a decade. And that being and that exhibition happens every 10 years. So really used the material that of the framework that the exhibition was given to create a work that spoke to that. So those are a couple off the top of my head.
Wow, those are fantastic examples for sure. And you got a chance to work with the City of Toronto Arts and Cultural Department and on Nuit Blanche. Tell us
Yes,
more about the festival, your time with the organization, and your favorite projects maybe that you curated.
for sure. Yes, I went. I mean, having a degree in dance, the City of Toronto was kind of the last place I thought I would end up because I sort of have a degree in dance to not work at, in the midst of a bureaucracy, or so I thought, right? And it shows you like, I don't know, you never know, never say never, you never know. And so I got an opportunity to work at the City of Toronto. And what I was really excited about as well is that there's opportunity to do big things and meaningful things and do things like that might change policy in some cases, and work in an arts and culture department in the seat of government. And so in some cases, we're offering government buildings to artists for artists to respond to directly, in confrontationally as well to the government. So this was a really interesting tension that was not always easy to navigate, but was super exciting and super important. And Nuit Blanche was supposed to be 1 year, and I thought I might be there. I started there before Nuit Blanche started, but I thought I might be there for a year or two, and then 18 years later, I was like, wow, this is what I do now. And it really became, I think because every year was so different. There was different curators and different artists, and each curator, of course, had a different theme, but a lot of the framework stayed the same, which was like free all night, and really working in this temporary public art and on a durational 12-hour basis. So it was always really exciting to see what different curators were going to come up with, because I was more on an artistic producing kind of role, supporting curatorial work. So I also learned a lot about curating through that position and met a lot of different people. And we did some amazing projects. We did some amazing projects, from like massive, large scale, like spectacle kind of based projects, and to things that are really small and intimate and emerging artists. So I also really liked that, working with that stretch, that it didn't have to be, it's all spectacle, it's all international artists, anything like that. It was actually like, I remember one time working with this mother and son duo who are having their exhibition for the first time together. And it's beautiful. There's so many small stories that don't get told in a project like Nuit Blanche that is so big and spectacle based. But
Yes, like, to me, it's one of my favorite festivals to go to. And I do think it changes every year, as you mentioned, with the curators or the programming. But it's definitely for a lot of people, especially when they come to Toronto for the first time for that festival. It's like it's a must go event.
for sure. And I think what I came to realize with it too is that well, I think very early on, I really appreciated that it was speaking in many cases also to first time viewers of contemporary art, because it has, like, for better or worse, there's lots of reasons to, like, a hater's gonna hate, like lots of people, and and we need that tension and that feedback too. But to also that there is a part of it that is about access, the fact that it's free, the fact that you can get food while you're around, the fact that you can pop from exhibition to exhibition and not have to commit to one at the same time. There are places where if you want to go deep, you can sit and go deep. But and then also eventually when it went out to Nuit Scarborough, we did Nuit Blanche Scarborough, really recognizing that, the center of downtown is not the center of the universe or the center of Toronto, and that there's places all around Toronto, and in particularly Scarborough, that were really groundbreaking, and actually have in many cases started contemporary art or cultural and artistic trends across Toronto that have then been taken out internationally. So I was really lucky to be able to be the artistic producer of Nuit Scarborough as well, which was really special.
Yes, and I think all the experience you had really brought a lot of into your current position. You're the curator of public projects at the Toronto Biennial of Art. tell us more about the organization. And I know the event is coming up this fall.
It is September 21st to December 1st at 10 different locations across the city. And two of our main hub areas, one is at 32 Lisgar Street, which is around like Queen and Dufferin area. And that's a group exhibition, and then also at 158 Sterling. So you have different choices about places you want to go and check out different exhibitions. There's about, I think, about 10 to 12 local Toronto artists, and then other Canadians and then international artists. The exhibition curators, because I'm the curator of public programs, the exhibition curators are Dominique Fontaine and Miguel Lopez, and they are incredible and have been titled their exhibition Precarious Joys. And really looking, at a lot of the challenges and trauma and heartbreak and occupation and oppression that artists and peoples are going through, and artists often have a platform to be able to speak to challenging things that are happening in the world. And at the same time, the precarious joys part of it is also that there is hope and beauty and joy on the other side, or some artists are, focusing to look at that. And so I think Dominique and Miguel have been looking at ideas through ideas of like home, refuge, dialogue, solace, and precarity. And so as a curator of programs, I get to do a couple things, which is one, I get to riff off their ideas a little bit, because for the programs, we're the live parts of the exhibition. So we're the parts that get to say, okay, you come at this certain time. And we really, I love thinking of programs also as kind of like hosting people in our home. We welcome people to go deeper with the ideas that the artists are presenting. And then we also get to add another layer. So then we have a performance series that is titled Your Timing is Perfect, Movements and Moments of Inquiry. And so these are different performance-based works that are looking at collectivity. They're looking at intergenerational conversation. They're looking at plant life and human life. They're looking at resistance and using gestures of resistance as a way to for the body to speak to the audience and to the ideas. And then there's a workshop series titled Keeping Time, and which is a little bit about coming back to the heartbeat and about the inner wisdom of the body and the inherent knowledge and the wisdom and the archives that exist within the body, and how at that base level of sort of the heartbeat, we extend out from there with our knowledge and share that with audiences. So these are just little snippets, but so because I'm really interested in ideas around the choreographic and embodied archives and movement as medicine and movement as a way of listening and paying attention. And I've been reading a lot of Jenny Odell, who's an author who's inspired a lot of my research, who writes a lot about time and attention. So these are some of my places that I've been working from to create my parts of the biennial that I'm working on.
Very important elements for sure for us to, again, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, ignite all the senses beyond looking at the works that they're probably like 2D or 3D depending, but also feel and go deep into even your thoughts and feelings.
Yes, absolutely. And then we also have like a learning series that we work with a lot of students. We invite students and we do something called the MAC tools, mobile arts curriculums. So my colleagues create these wonderful tools with artists. That the programs really just looks at multiple layers of like, how do we go a little bit layer deeper? How do we invite someone else in? Because not everyone accesses art, of course, the same way. Like there's so many different ways and lenses and experiences and lived experiences to come at art with. So we try to offer multiple opportunities for that.
And that's fantastic. But also knowing that you do have, I would say, 2 years, right, to get ready for the event.
Yeah.
What is this process of like from the beginning having a call for art or like going through the selection process to making it happen? What does that entail?
Well, there's an ideation aspect. I mean, and also coming into the biennial for one was me understanding, like not making any assumptions. Like I do know it's a biennial and it's every 2 years and the team is amazing. I've been to the biennials before, like, so I was really aware of what they were doing and really had respect for the way they, presented and the programs, because sometimes programs are a little bit, sort of just activating artworks, like existing artworks. But I really feel like programs at the biennial, they really do try to deepen engagement in an authentic way, a meaningful way. So the first of all, it's understanding what is the biennial trying to do, and understand the context itself, and doing some reading and working with my colleagues, but then coming up with ideas. And I really kind of went like, what feels urgent for me right now? Because I think as a curator, part of my job is to give a platform to artists. And I think I can do that in a couple different ways. And one is to say, what am I researching? What am I thinking about? What am I interested in? But at the same time, I don't need to present my expertise either. I need to also let artists lead as well. But I feel like I could, through this research about like time, attention, space as and the body as material, I can authentically engage artists to respond to that and give them a place to riff off. And some of that is existing work. So sometimes I'm seeing work that I'm saying, can we book that at the biennial? And a few of them are like straight up dance pieces, which I don't think the biennial has done before. Whereas other times it is talks, walks, workshops, hands-on workshops, like making, like painting, clay. And these are things sometimes other artists I'm working with are wanting to see in their own program. So a lot of it's also listening to the artists and trying to let them lead, and then you try to take a lot of the work off of them. And so then we do it so their message and their ideas can come through.
Yes, I like
And
this.
of course, right now we're in what's like marketing and deadlines and websites and press releases and all these nitty-gritty things that help make it make that connection to the public. There's so many different things of outreach that curatorial work is involved in. It's not just, of course, ideas and artists. There's a lot of administration, important
And I
administration.
think also like measuring success in general, like it's such a difficult process, especially if you do that after the event itself to see like how many visit and whatnot. But what are the major goals for you guys, for the organization, beyond just people coming and seeing the work?
I mean, that's so great to consider. And I like thinking about this because, of course, especially when I was at the city, metrics are important because sometimes metrics means you can get money for something, like so, or metrics can help change a policy. Like these things, measurements are important. But we also used to talk about like, how do you measure joy? And how do you measure connection with someone else or a conversation? And knowing that these are things that we might not measure, but that still really matter and have value. And some of those might be things like, I mean, I would also of course, it's like you hope people come, you hope people have a positive experience, or that not even positive, but are engaged, and sometimes that means having challenging conversations, and that we've created a platform for that. I hope that people are moved a little bit and can get a little lost in the poetic nature of what some of the artworks offer, and kind of feed the soul, at a time when the world is in polycrisis. Sometimes art can speak to that, and we can learn about that, and we can resist and push back. And then at the same time, we can also sometimes soften and help us listen or heal even. These are big asks, of course, of an artwork. And then I guess I would also say, I really appreciate also hopefully that we've helped take an artist's work somewhere new, or given them a platform that they've maybe been able to think of a new way to work, that or a new project that they've been wanting to do and then get to do. So for me, that's also, is the artist happy? Is the artist, have we helped the artist get to present something that they feel good about? And then I think these small engagements of audience and artist and artwork, which are that not, you can't really measure them, but they're there. So it matters. Sometimes it matters when people give you feedback, but also, trusting that hopefully that energy, beautiful energy and connection is happening, even though you don't know it.
Yes, and I do think public projects in general, they can be even more important than just like going to exhibitions in galleries and museums that are just static. You are probably keeping a pulse on what's happening in the city and country and beyond Canada in general. What do you think is the state of public art is in Canada today?
Well, I think it's certainly getting better because there's more conversation around it, like that. And because, I mean, as we also see, artists really risking their own livelihood and safety, in some cases, toppling artworks of which are no longer, or I was going to say no longer relevant, or were not ever relevant, or I guess that's not the right thing to think about, but it's like, it's not that they weren't relevant, but it's also they were harmful, of who gets to go on a monument, and so I think this has been in question for some time, and this is a very active conversation as streets and places and teams are renamed because people are recognizing the harm that it's done. So I think this is a really important time that public art plays in that conversation, and has the potential and power to do, and also, through the city of Toronto, we did a project called ArtworxTO, which was the year of public art, where even a survey of the public art was done around the city and looking at the plaques and is it named properly? Do we know what it is? Who is the artist? And also trying to put more money into artists who might not naturally be inclined to make public art because they might think that that's not my practice, or that's not for me, or that's not my voice. And so there's actually, trying to encourage people to learn more how to apply to grants for public art or public art commissions. And there's a lot of people doing great work to try to outreach that in a new way, try to do some engagement of emerging artists who might just be emerging in the public art practice field. I don't know. So I guess just to say, I feel like it's hopeful. I feel like it's sometimes controversial, which is great. Like people love, like, I love that, I hate that, it's in a public space, and who's the public it's for. Like, I think it's really good to be questioning, like, what is the public space? What is it being used for? How can this public art make this space different, better, more engaging, more welcoming, and for whom? So I think it's an opportunity to propose some good questions around public space and multiple publics themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're living in a really good time. Like, I agree with you. I all the time see on Akimbo calls for proposals, calls for art, for public projects. And for me, it's a big win because it wasn't like this even 2 years ago or
Yeah.
so. But at the same time, a lot of them have a lot of specifications on, like, usually it's sculpture and then a lot of limitations that I'm like, okay, so a lot of restrictions still.
Yes, yeah. No, it's not an easy genre to work in,
No.
certainly, because also, I mean, I've seen that through Nuit Blanche, but also through public art juries I've been on too. It's like, what if the public climbs it? Like, what if, like, the safety part of it is so real, like it can't fall, it can't fall on someone. Kids, I've seen many sculptures being climbed at Nuit Blanche, which at times has been quite entertaining and other times less
You
so,
have
but
any
yeah.
recommendations maybe for artists who are planning to apply or propose some suggestions?
Sure. Yeah, I would also say, like, it wouldn't be a bad idea to find out also who's working in that field of, like, and feel free to ask questions or ask people to review your proposal. Like, if it's not in conflict and they're direct there, but I would say, you know, there's people at the City of Toronto who work sort of indirectly in public art that might um, be able to like review proposals, or there's organizations, you know, like Rebecca Carbon, which is Art Plus Public. There's like specialists who are working in that field of public art. I can't say they're necessarily going to give you, you know, everyone's time is precious and whatnot, but you know, it's like anything that we're trying to grow. I think it's like ask questions, ask for information meetings, do your research. Maybe if you can find a piece of art that you're like, this works for me, maybe the artist is still around and you could, you know, chat or meet with that artist. Yeah, a few suggestions.
Yes, and I think with another aspect that really changes public art is technology. And I also feel like in the last 2 years or so, less people are going out, whether it's to galleries or even attending art events in general. So how this, as well as the technology advancement, influence what you do in the public art realm?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say I think we're seeing things like 3D art making itself, but like I haven't dealt so much like with things like NFTs, or you know, like video is certainly part of my realm of what I work in. But I would say, I mean, there's so many advancements that, and artists are always on the cusp, you know, and so and then of course, like, you know, I think it's a matter of researching and going deep into it. It's not part of my research, but I know people who are like, there's artists who are working with AI in such interesting ways. So rather than just write something off, you know, as, you know, there's a lot of, as something that is, has limitations or is going to challenge us. You know, I really appreciate all artists that often the ones who are really looking at what are the opportunities, how do we work with this. Yeah, it's not my area of focus per se, but I have faith that, you know, artists are going to be asking some hard questions about you know, technology and AI for sure, and hopefully they'll save us from you know, all the things that could go wrong with dear AI.
I know. It's a lot of questions that I'm not sure when we're gonna get all the answers, but we will
Yeah.
see. Time will show. But
Yeah.
I also want to learn a little bit more about your personal projects and your research and practice. Maybe tell us a little bit about your past projects that you're proud of and excited to share with us today.
Sure. Well, as I said, my background is dance, my first as my own personal art practice, and so I work with different mediums, but usually it comes from an embodied lens and research. So sometimes it's a straight up dance performance piece. I've recently had a series that was a trio in public space, and I love responding to sight. I have to say, I think that's between all the experience, like I think with Nuit Blanche, but I've always sort of done site specific things, even when I was in school and very young. Like we would be like, you know, often didn't have money to do something like always rent a studio or have a performance space. So we'd be like, here's an alley, here's a hallway, here's the metro system when I was in Montreal. Like you just kind of danced where you could. And that's become definitely part of my own practice. Um, and so three of my pieces, I have a piece closer, which deals with sort of depth of field, with dancers coming from far away to coming closer, and the idea that the sound also gets closer, and another piece, If I Should Stumble. And I like, and these are all sort of done. So one's done for an alley, one's done for a staircase. And If I Should Stumble, I work with the theme of falling a lot, falling and getting back up, and the idea of resilience. And a lot of times it's from, you know, a feminist lens, and Stumble was created outside of City Hall when I was also working there when Rob Ford was mayor. And anyways, I ended up working, you know, from that inspiration, I hired a stunt woman to throw herself down the stairs multiple times because oops, I did not have the capability to do that. And then other dancers move up the stairs, and it's to a soundtrack by Tanya Tagaq. And it's just, to me, it's kind of like a choreographic sculpture. And in all of these pieces too, I have multiple collaborators that I work with, and Sarah Doucette is one of my collaborators that I work closely with, choreographically and costume wise, and rehearsal direction. And then I have a lot of dancers I work with that I sort of have a team that I love to pull from, but always pulling in new people. And I think more and more, I'm also working with sound and the body, and I've had great collaborations, like I said, with Camilla Singh, who I met as a curator, but then we ended up creating an art band together called Mortified. And it was always great to open a gig to say, hello, we are Mortified. And then we have 2 drum kits that we'd slam. And we said it was like this emotional response to an aggressive world. And it was really using materials as sound. And I think part of that research, like different materials, drum kits, tap dancing, we've, but never really singing. But playing with, I like the idea of like working with the body as song, and how does the body create sound and music and song and rhythm. And this is a new part of my research, or an old part of my research that I'm going deeper into, that I'm excited about. And I'm finding my work to, I think, some installation work and some video I'm going to come back to, because I used to do more videos. So I feel like my materials might be opening up.
Yes, that's fantastic. And like even talking about doing everything like outside, not being tied to any specific place, like I love those projects. But I know you did an artist residency at Gallery TPW, right? Can you
Mhm.
tell us a bit more about that project?
Yeah, that was quite a while ago. That was with curator Kim Simon, who brought me in to do that. And it was such a lovely project with a group of wonderful collaborators and friends. And I was thinking about, again, how the body shows up in visual art and gallery spaces, and how, the performance can linger or stay, or how performance is the exhibition, rather than sort of activating or program. And so for those, it was called Your Timing is Perfect and Other Wall Works. And the part of what we played with was, as performers, really mostly almost always acknowledging what was happening in the room. So when people walked in the room, there was this one section where we were really like, you know, Jason's here, hello Jason, while we're still performing, and kind of like really trying to work with this like presence of mind, and almost a live documentation of what was happening. And we were also writing on the wall sometimes what was happening. But also part of our challenge was one of us had to always be connected to the wall. And so you could never just be in space. You could only be in space if you were connected to someone who was connecting to the wall. So we became the wall works. And so we had these restrictions, and I like working with sort of restrictions, like whether that's a space or something in the body, that it's something to problem solve, which I think helps create opportunities. So that was a lovely residency. And I just did a residency at Harborfront as well. And that was great for a new work of mine called The Changeover, which is about a changeover between bands. But it's a very fresh idea. So we'll see where that goes.
Yes, and I love the collaborative aspect because I do think it brings more impact on so many levels when you're doing a project together with either another artist or curators collaborate, because you can get to a level when you do something on your own, but then it really empowers the space and the effect that you're going for when you're working together, whether it's a team or two, three, four people.
100%. I mean, I think dancers and dance artists tend to learn, I think, how to do a lot with a little, but then, like, meaning sometimes you're like, oh, I'm going to do the lighting, and I'm going to do the sound, and I'm going to do the costumes. But you hopefully get to a place too where you realize, where you have these wonderful team members and collaborators. And I've been so lucky to have that, for sure. Like, because no one, I mean, I'm certainly not an expert at any of these sort of things. So I love that collaboration when you can put in an idea and really see someone else say, you know what, I like that. And, and someone can, and this is the beauty of collaboration too, is that you're just kind of like, you can jam together on ideas, and And there's dancers I work with who can do things with their body that I can't do. So then I can put out an idea and they can help me see like, oh yes, we can take it this further. Or like I say, like with costumes and with sound, people who just hear and see things that I would never. But sometimes I'm good at having sort of this big picture of a vision. And then I get a lot of hands and a lot of help filling that in to make something actually happen.
And then for all the artists listening who might feel stuck a little bit, maybe they have ideas in mind, they've been proposing them, but never heard back or not getting to the point where they want to go. Do you have any suggestions on how to move your project forward?
Well, I guess there's like creative or logistic, like, so I would say, I mean, I've had so many no's and rejections, as many, probably more than yeses, right? Because that's, and I've also done multiple things in my career, but many artists, of course, like you get so many grant declines and you got to, I say, just keep putting things out there, like don't stop applying. Like if you feel that passion that you're like, I want to make the thing, you know. I've also had projects that I've taken really, really far that then never happened. And I still sometimes think, oh my gosh, like why? And I just couldn't, it just wasn't meant to be. And that's hard to walk away from something, And when does one do that? Sometimes, but I also feel like it didn't mean it's not worthwhile. Like those ideas and those efforts still come into this fabric of your artistic practice and still matter and are part of you as this common denominator in your life that is working to for self-expression. So I don't know, sometimes like for me, if I'm feeling sort of creatively stuck, often I read or I walk or like movement usually helps. Or I would go see art. Sometimes some people will isolate themselves with their idea and go like, I can't see anything else except that. And I think there's certain music I would listen to, that I think that finding inspiration. And then logistically, sometimes it's like take a breath, step away from the screen, get re-energized, try a different path or try that same path again. And I guess I would also say it's vulnerable, right? To put yourself out there, and it's vulnerable and hard to get no's. So some of it is having a bit of a thick skin, which it's funny that I say that because I really don't. I think I'm quite a sensitive person, but over the years, you also know because I know as a curator too, some things don't work. It doesn't mean I don't like that work, but it might not work in this situation. So let's keep trying. Anyways, I would say, keep trying, try a different path, take a break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me,
Soften, slow down.
the most important thing is to keep artistic integrity because
Yeah.
sometimes you get so many criticisms or different opinions and like the work you originally created can become a totally different thing, and by the end of the day you think, oh my god, what just happened? Like it
Yeah.
changed so much and it's not my idea anymore. So kind of finding the balance of making it too quote unquote marketable or acceptable to the point where it's not suiting you anymore.
Totally. I think it has to make sense for you. And I think it's like taking feedback or ideas from people you trust. You don't have to take feedback from everyone, so it is a little bit like careful who you invite into your artistic world because that's precious space.
And then, as a curator of public art, do you feel there are some like misconceptions about the realm of public art that you would like to break? Something that people think that it's that way, but it's not true, or maybe about art in
Yeah.
general.
I mean, this wouldn't be for artists would already know this, but I found sometimes at some places when I worked early on, people thought artists were making all this money. Like, and that they were just selling their work everywhere. I was like, no, 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 no. Artists are living like below the poverty line. Like not everyone, but like, or hustling for jobs. And so I saw it sort of in this room, people were like, really? And I was like, oh my gosh, yes. But like as working artists, we know that. But I would say, so this is why um constantly considering, of course, artist fees and how artists are being paid and things like that. And artist care is so important. So I guess it depends whose misconceptions, who are you talking to? Or, you know, in many cases, there were some other people that I talked to that also didn't consider like, oh, is art kind of, you know, budgets need to be spent on so many things. Is it frivolous to spend it on art? You know, and it's like, no, like it gives so much to the fabric of our lives, of course, but I was also like, you're wearing a watch, someone designed it. You know, you went to that baseball stadium, there's an architect involved like that. There's actually art everywhere. And even if it's not hung on your wall, or you're not sitting in the theater, you know, or you turn on your radio and a song comes on, you know, an artless world would be dreary and dark and
I
not,
agree. And I think
not
it's
good.
also like talking about all the aspiring professionals who are coming into the industry or would love to do more curatorial projects. Like it's not the easiest industry to be in, but it's super rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah, and it can be a pain in the ass too. For sure. But because it's a lot of like, it is, of course, it's super rewarding. It's like, and I love just working with art and artists and ideas, you know, really like creativity is at the core of it. And I think the other thing is realizing like there's also a ton of email and a ton of organizing and a follow-up and chasing and all these kind of things. Like it's, you know, there's a whole bunch of parts that are super not glamorous and a whole bunch of like, I gotta step away from the screen. But I would say it's for aspiring professionals coming in. Is that what you were saying? Yeah. For curatorial stuff. And I guess it's also like, you know, curation too is everywhere now. You know, we've seen this over the past few years, you know, Starbucks curating their coffees and everywhere. Like the word is kind of what it means is kind of like putting some things together in an intentional way, right? And we can, though it comes from this idea of like caring for a collection, part of it means care. So it's like care for yourself in it, care for the artists you work with, care for the, you know, and also what do you care about? What do you care about putting out there in the world? And it might also be start small. Like there's a lot of cafes that have artwork in it. If you're just wanting to get started, you know, there's even like a laundromat up the street from me. It's so great that uses their space as exhibition space. And it's working, you know, so it doesn't, you don't have to jump to like the big gallery or have those expectations, and it might not be all it's cut out to be either, if that's, you
There are a
know,
lot
if
of
that's your
possibilities.
goal. Yep, it looks
You're
like a lot of different things. There's a lot of different options.
for
Yeah.
sure. And do you have any upcoming projects beyond just the biennial that you're super excited about?
Well, I just went in the studio today for the first time with a dancer, Katie Adams Gossage, and just it's so fun to start a new process when you kind of don't know what it is, but you come in with an idea, and then to see like this amazing dance artist help bring that idea to life. And so that's so fresh. I'm like, I don't know what it is yet, but we want to jam on these ideas. And yeah, and then I'm working at, like I say, on this piece, The Changeover, in which I was working with collaborators, Kate Ann Curvis and Sherry Hay, Dave Clark, Sarah Doucette, Alana Mercury Contour, like bunch of people who are coming in different ways. Because I think this one could be like a really big production. And at the same time, I want to make it modular. So it also has like a video element, sound element, uh, a band practice element. But I'm really excited about this idea of like sounding the body and the body as an instrument. So that's stuff I'm playing with right now.
I'm excited to see the fruitful collaboration come into a beautiful project that we will
Thank
be
you.
able to see. And for everyone listening who would like to learn more about what you do and stay in touch, where they can go.
I have a website, jenngoodwin.ca, JENNGOODWIN. And then I'm on Instagram at JENNYGEEZZZ. Yeah, I think that's pretty good.
Fantastic. And I highly recommend everyone to check your Instagram, stay in touch. And we're all excited about the biennial and everything that's going to come with the festival. And I'm really excited to listen and learn more about your story and keep in touch and see all your independent projects coming.
Thank you. And I should plug the biennial website, of course, too, torontobiennial.org. So September 21st, that opens. And yeah, 10 weeks of art. It's going to be amazing. Yeah.
That's fantastic. We're all excited about it.
Thank you, Lisa.